Okay. Right, taking off my list. So I've got a couple of new members of Wessex Archaeology staff to introduce you to. We have Erica. Erica, give us a wave. Erica is our expert today. Hi, Erica.
Hiya.
Erica's going to be opening the boxes and showing you the objects and answering any questions that you might have. And we have Tom. Tom. There he is. Tom's our cameraman. Tom's the Wessex Archaeology photographer, and he is filming Erica. So Tom's got quite a setup in a room just a few doors down from where I am. So is everybody okay? Everybody?
Yeah, that looks like Amazon parcel force.
Yeah.
If only we had as much room as them.
I'm still waiting on a few deliveries. Can you bring them over?
This is our main finds room here at the Salisbury office. So everything comes in here from our sites, whether that's prehistoric material, Roman material, medieval material. It all comes here first, straight from site. And then the first thing that happens to it is that it has to be cleaned and processed so that our specialists can analyse it. So if you can see down there, Tom's got the camera now on Rob, who's one of my colleagues, and he's washing some material from one of our new sites. And the best bit of the job doing the processing is that you don't know what's coming next. Last week we were working on Roman material. This week we could well be working on prehistoric material, and you never know what's going to come in the door next. This one, Lee, is from Bulford, which is just up the road on Salisbury Plain, and it's from an Anglo-Saxon cemetery which we excavated about 4 or 5 years ago. And the cemetery mainly dated from the 7th century AD. That was its main period of use. And this particular spearhead was found in the grave of a gentleman that we come to call the Warrior, because he had this enormous spear and he also had a knife with him as well. And we're going further back into time for this one. So this one is a Neolithic axe made of flint. And this isn't local, this piece. This was found at a site called Datchet, which is up near Windsor. And this dates from the early Neolithic, so about 3,800 years BC. And I actually showed this to Phil Harding last week, and he's telling me that due to the shape of the axe, you can see it's got quite a sharp angle here. He thinks that's been reworked. So originally the axe would have been much fatter, but it's been reworked, possibly because it's become damaged. And you can see there's also damage on the edge here, which he says is actually quite easy to do because of this very sharp angle of the cutting edge. He says if you hit a tree wrong with that, it will soon break off. And he knows because he's done it himself with replica axes that he's made. And he says this would have produced many words of Neolithic disappointment when this broke. Okay, and we're going to the 4th century AD, and this is a copper alloy brooch that was found at Amesbury Down. And this piece was found in a cremation, and it was part of a series of cremation deposits, some of which were in urns, some of which were not in urns, which suggests they might have been in something that's rotted away, perhaps a cloth or a leather bag that's obviously not survived. And it was associated with the remains of a cremation of a young man, probably over 18, but yeah, so this is with his cremation. And the cremations were in a shallow ditch which formed a square enclosure around the bodies of a very high status female and also a young male child. And we've gone to the 19th century now. This is a clay tobacco pipe, but quite an unusual form because it's square. Normally they're round. They start off in the mid to late 1600s. They're quite small in the bowl because tobacco is a very expensive luxury, so you can only have a tiny piece. But as tobacco becomes more cheaper and more readily available, the bowls get much bigger, and this gives a lot of scope for decoration. So we get all kinds of decoration: flowers, leaves, animals, and sometimes also advertising, which this pipe is an example of.
Right, so next week when we come back together, I'm going to ask you all to decide which 2 objects are going to go into this digital museum. So it's about which objects you found interesting this week, but also it's considering what will be interesting to other people, because when we create this digital museum, it will be available for the public to access. So thinking about the stories behind the objects and their history and what you know about them should all play a part in your decision making as to which two we put into the museum. And then we will follow those two objects as they go through the process of being scanned, and you'll be able to see how you can interact with them on a 3D platform.
This platform today, in some ways, you get more from the experience of the objects than just going into a museum and walking past lots of glass containers and then reading the tiny writing at the side to try and work out what's going on.
My father was a watchmaker. When I was a kid, I remember him sitting in one of our bedrooms was turned into a workshop, so that he could do his repairing clocks and watches. And he was a clockmaker as well. But you know, when I was going to bed, I used to be taken into him for a good night kiss, and he'd be sat there with this eyeglass in doing his repairing. So it's quite evocative for me. But when he was in the army, all his comrades used to bring him their broken watches for him to repair. He was never actually formally trained. And when he came out of the army, he'd lived in London and he didn't really know what to do. And he saw a job advertised in Cirencester in a jeweller's for a watchmaker. And he went for the interview and he got the job. But he always felt that he'd lived a lie all his life. And I only found this out about a month before he died.
Wow, that's incredible.
He actually felt he wasn't worthy, which I think was really sad.
All I've got is my phone. Because we've become so reliant on them, we just can't seem to operate these days with them at all.
Do you find, whilst we've been in lockdown, have you all been using your technology more to kind of, you know, stay in contact with the outside world? You know, I think that's why I have a love-hate relationship with my phone, because I'm looking at it all the time to find out what's going on. But it just takes up so much of my time as well.
It does. It's a time waster.
Yeah.
So, but on the other hand, like you said, if you haven't got it, you miss it because I read the news on it when I get up in the morning. I get up about 6:30 in the morning, and the first thing I do is go on the tablet and just read the news. I think what it's done is increased how you can connect with each other, but you've lost the face-to-face thing. I know at the moment with coronavirus you can't, but I think even in ordinary day life, there's so many people walking about looking at phones. You just seem to lose the good morning to people because they got their head on the phone.
I think in the past, when I was a teenager, I'd go out on a Saturday night and I would say to my friend, I will meet you next week on the tube at a certain time. There would be no tardiness or anything like that. My friend would just miraculously appear without any further communication. And that's something which is completely different now. We spend about 10 messages before we've even met our friend, say, oh, well, I'm just coming over the hump now and I'll be with you in 5 minutes and I'm just opening the door. And it seems, I don't know how we coped without phones, but we coped very well without phones.
I agree. They almost make you neurotic, don't they? Like if you haven't heard from someone, if you sent someone a message and they haven't replied, but you're right, you've made an arrangement to meet somewhere and you get there and you think, are they going to turn up because they didn't reply to the message? That's not a good thing, is it?
No.
Oh. Yeah, it's just something that I have started using, and it affects more or less everything that you are all using there. It's a soldering iron.
Ah.
We're all using computers. This is one of the things you use to repair them. And it's something that I've become interested in over the last few months. Repairing computers, phones, tablet computers, all things like that, anything electronic. And I only just started on it, and I was, as Jackie will know, I do repair stuff and get old computers going and make use of them. What other people throw away, I repair.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Did you pick it up yourself?
Yeah, it was just something that I started looking at, and I thought, well, what can I do? And something went wrong I can't remember what it was, but it just started me off, and this is what I've ended up with.
Nice.
And now I've got so many computers and laptops and notebook computers and everything else around the house. It's getting silly.
I started off when I left school. I did an apprenticeship. I was an electronics engineer.
Yeah.
And to do this yourself, that's really, really clever. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just a new career.
You must be enjoying it, John, as well.
I do. Yeah. Yes, it is something that I do like doing. You're working on your own. You're not under any pressure. You just keep going till you find the answers.
The story, the pictures that they're going to paint of us, of this generation, of what we did in this time, it's quite, I don't know, is it a good story, do you think? Are we leaving behind a good legacy with our plastic and our mobile phones?
Not
really.
at all, as far as I'm concerned. I think it's quite depressing.
I think the way that we're utilising materials now and products so throwaway, I don't like it at all. It upsets me that we're not reusing things. Like Doug is now, reusing computers, for instance, and that's the way to go. But metals last a long, long time. Ceramics last a long, long time. I mean, you'd be almost out of business, Wessex Archaeology, if there weren't any ceramics. Bits of broken. Yeah. So the fact that plastics also lasts a long time, it depends how it's being used. And I think people have abused polymers, and that's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Like plastic bags, we don't need plastic bags. It's better to have paper bags. I think companies now will make, say, machinery which has mechanical parts and electronic parts to not work after 2 or 3 years, so that they have to be either you have to get insurance to get it repaired, or you buy a new one, and that's the way it is now.
So if you want to just type in the names of the 2 items that you would like to go into the museum and then press send, I will see which 2 get the most votes.
Oh, look, I think we're all going for the same thing.
So look at that.
Unanimous, pretty much, isn't it?
It is.
It is, isn't
yeah,
it?
It is. So
it's almost like
Erica,
winning a prize.
It is almost like winning a prize. So this is fantastic. Thank you very much, everybody. So you've now chosen the first 2 objects to go into our interactive digital museum. So next week in the session, you will meet Will. Will is part of our studio team, as is Tom, and he is a 3D specialist, and will show us how he's going to scan those 2 objects on the 3D scanner so they become part of the digital museum.
I've been an archaeological illustrator since 1998. I try and do as much as possible within the team. So I do finds illustration, typesetting, graphic design, illustration, 3D modeling, 3D printing. So I do most of the things that the company does within the studio. And so 3D scanning and 3D printing is the latest sort of thing that I've been playing with. So this is a new piece of equipment, and I've been getting to play with it during lockdown, which is fun. So basically today we're just going to look at how Wessex Archaeology is using what's called structured light scanning, so SLS from now on, which is a new type of scanning that we use for capturing 3D objects. We might as well actually start doing a scan, so I'll start getting that running now. So first thing I need to do is actually start getting the scanner working. And I'm using a turntable. This is sort of turntable that is actually used in sort of shop displays, but it means that when I have the scanner set up on the tripod, it's at the optimum distance for us to actually do the scan. And the optimum distance in this case is about 20 centimeters. So I've managed to sort of set that up, and when I've got the turntable running, I'll now click on preview, and you'll start seeing that you can see it's actually flashing, and it doesn't look like it's too bad actually. But on my screen, can you see that here you can see the brooch is actually appearing within the preview. And this is just a sort of a preview of what I'm actually scanning. So actually, at the moment, I'm a little bit off center. So I'm just going to move that back in the center. Over here on the left-hand side, this is the range meter. So it's telling me how sort of where with this histogram, and the histogram is essentially a graph or a data bar of information that's actually giving me a feedback as to where the object is within sort of the range. I have to, if I can, try and get the range or this information within the center of this range meter here. So once I've actually got the preview running, and then click on record, and you'll see that it'll now change, and we start getting a sort of a green feedback as it's recording the surface. Over here, we're actually getting the number of frames that are actually being recorded here. So this is 88 frames at the moment. So I'm actually just going to move this over here. There we go, that's better. Cool.
How many spins does it need to do, Will?
I usually do about 200 frames per scan. In this case, I'm only going to do a couple of actual scans, mainly because it can take quite a while to stitch all the information together.
So last week's home task was create, and that was following on from Will's really interesting talk and demonstration about how the 3D scanning process works. And my task to you was to choose an object or some objects and to photograph it or draw them or create a 3D or 2D image using that particular object. So the first piece of homework that came in was from Trev. Trev, do you just want to say a little bit about what this is, and then we can explain what happened over the course of last week?
Well, it's just my mobile again, and I've got a thing about mobiles, nothing about the mobile, but the people who use them. Like people walk into you when they're reading them, and there's been a lot of deaths where people are using them on the road. So to me, it's a good and bad thing. So I just wanted to make the mobile look. I was going to try and get the mobile in loads of different positions, and then try and make them into a flower, which is just trying to make them look pretty rather than what it is. So that's what the idea was behind it.
Brilliant idea.
Well, it would have been if I could do it, but
Yeah, but
it was way above my intelligence. So I did have a backup plan, but I sent an email to Lee, and Lee kindly sent it on to Tom, and then Tom has produced something. So he did all the work.
No.
so Tom has come up with something which I think is really good. So he achieved what I wanted to do.
That's because the brief was so good, Trev.
There we go.
Oh my God,
That's really good.
amazing. How amazing.
Isn't it a lovely collaboration?
Oh, that is wonderful. And I mean, you've got to have the idea to start with, haven't you?
Exactly.
Before you can do anything with it. And that is just amazing.
Yeah, I thought it was a great idea because it tied in nicely to a lot of things we'd discussed as a group, you know, through the different sessions about technology and its effect on the natural world and people, as Trev just said. So I thought it was a great idea.
Yeah. Perfect.
And I think we'd all rather hold a flower than hold a phone in our hands all the time, wouldn't we? You know, if you had the choice of what you're carrying around with you, but we don't, do we? We're so attached to our phones. It's very hard to leave them behind.
I said to Tom, any more homework I get, then I'll just pass it on.
We'll all be doing that. We'll all be sending it to Tom. Trevor, are you pleased with how this turned out?
Brilliant. Yeah, very pleased. Very pleased.
So you should be. That is amazing. And I like the whole idea that it is a partnership as well.
Yeah. So do I. It was a lovely, lovely collaboration. I'm really pleased we're able to make that happen. But Jackie, whilst you were doing it, did you enjoy this process of drawing him?
I was just about to say that the one thing that I would say is what's lovely, even if you're not naturally talented, is just to sit and have a go. It's so relaxing. And let's say I'm not a natural. I've got a few pencils and I've got a few watercolors, and I like the whole idea of being able to paint a scene or whatever it might be. And I'm gonna have another go at doing some more things.
Picking up on your point of, when you see art and you think anyone could do that, hopefully what I've been asking you all to do over the course of this project, no one else can do this because these are your objects and you're making these choices about what you want to share with us. So, there's that sense of this absolutely belonging to you and you have choice. And you're, it's an honor that you're all sharing these things with us and we're getting this little glimpse into your lives. It's, it's a kind of precious thing. And hopefully, I think when you go now to an art gallery, that maybe you'll think differently about the work that artists produce. Because, I have that same reaction as well with some particular pieces might be quite challenging, but this belongs to you. This belongs to you as individuals. So I really love your little hair, Jackie.
The axe flint, I mean, it was just because it was such a beautiful tactile thing, such a lot of work because it didn't need to be polished to do the job. And the brooch was practical yet attractive. I mean, yeah, amazed by the flint, really, more than I thought I would be.
I thought the brooch, I did ask whether the brooch would have been everyday use, and I said yes. Erica said it probably. So that's one of the reasons I chose the brooch. And the axe I thought would have been used by people, although it could have been just an ornament. But that's the reason I chose those two, because the majority of stuff you get is usually down to chieftains or wealthy people. The ordinary goods you don't seem to get many of.
For the flint, because it was an everyday practical object that was obviously so useful and created out of natural stone from this part of the world. I think that was what appealed to me, and also the amount and the number of hours it would have taken to make it and sharpen it. And as to the brooch, I just think I just really liked it as an object, to be honest.
It is quite striking, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And the workmanship in it for the time. Although I'm very aware that, things of that age, very often the workmanship is much more detailed than that was. But it was lovely. And I like the idea that, because I think men and women used to use them, didn't they? And put on
these ones, yeah.
So again, it's something that was very much used as an everyday, very practical, useful thing, but also very beautiful.
Yes, so I chose the axe and the brooch. So I thought the brooch was like how many people used it, to make it. How many people did it actually take? Because there's so many different elements of it.
You could quite possibly have somebody making the glass and then the metal bit being made separately. Yeah. And then third person perhaps to put it all together.
Yeah, and then the axe, you've probably got one person working on that for many, many hours to try and perfect it. And you probably think it's probably got bits flaking off and things like that, and having to try and work it more, try and get it to how they want it.
That's it.
The hours of workmanship that's gone into it, really.
Yeah, and the hours of experience needed to produce something like that. Because I imagine when you first start doing that kind of thing, you make loads of mistakes, you hit it in the wrong place at the wrong angle, and back to square one.
Exactly. Yes, that's why I chose.
Is that something you would like to have a go at, Paul?
Yeah, quite interested to have a go at that.
Yeah, I would be quite interested to just sit down and have a go at making an axe. I think it looks like it would be really, really relaxing.
And the intricacy of the brooch and the pure skill needed to form the flint axe. and to keep it in that condition, and it would have been, in my mind, pride and joy of the person using it.
Yeah.
The brooch, again, the intricacy of the work that went into it. I mean, it wasn't like the pipe, which would have probably been pressed and into a mold, but the brooch would have been done by hand and sort of worked into that shape, and the patterns and the work on the glass as well would have been very intricate, and again taken a lot of skill, considering that the tools that the people had at the time and the technology. I thought that was just brilliant.
Yeah. I think it's that this word keeps coming out, doesn't it? It's craftsmanship and skill and time. And I wonder if over the course of these few weeks, when you have had the time to attempt, the home tasks, it kind of brings home to you, doesn't it? How much time you have to set aside to do something like that. And it's not something that you can just kind of rattle off quickly. And I guess, Trev, because you've been doing your spoons and your bowl and stuff, they're real labors of love, aren't they? Something like that, to create something from nothing is a real labor of love.
Yeah, it is, but it gives you an awful lot of mindfulness, satisfaction, because you can. When I was doing spoons, I started doing spoons just after Christmas or just before Christmas, and you can just sit there, especially outside, and just whittle a spoon, and you just, the time just goes. You're in another world. All the worries and all the problems just seem to fade while you're concentrating on what you're doing.
So it's worth that
Something you
investment of
said-
time, isn't it, to get that?
Definitely worth the time. Definitely. I think a lot of the problem is when I'm 72 and it's taken me this long before I've had the time to do what I enjoy doing and find what I enjoy doing. I think when you've got a mortgage and you've got a house and you've got children, it's so much harder to say, right, I'm going to have half a day and do what I want, because it's virtually impossible.
Yeah.
You're right.
It is, but really, I'm sort of talking Richmond Fellowship speak. We should all build this time into our lives, every one of us, shouldn't we? I think we've all learnt that with the coronavirus, that we need to build that time into our everyday life so that we keep well.
I think you're right, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing that comes through is that everybody seems to have a passion for what it is they're talking about, and even knowledge as well. I think if you yourself impart excitement with your knowledge base and, have that sense of awe that you have as a child, where you can easily take on information, then if you can part that with, it's fantastic. It's made me realise that perhaps the knowledge that I think is lost in me isn't completely lost. I just need the right platform to be jogged to remember, and that you don't really lose it if you don't use it completely. As I say, you just need to be in the right environment.
I think I might have said in a previous session, it's about opportunity and it's about invitation, isn't it? And we've put Lost and Found together in the hope that it presents you with both of those things. And over the course of the project, you can go on and realise stuff that you used to do and that you've missed, and then maybe find pleasure in that again, and that can only be of benefit to you. So that's really lovely feedback. Thank you very much.
I think it's been brilliant. Talking to you in the past few weeks, I realised how old I am, because I started work when I was 15 as an electrician, then went into electronics. And something that said a couple of weeks ago about the televisions and things, I was repairing 12-inch black and white TVs when you could only get BBC and ITV. And they were all valves. So, over the last few weeks, I've actually had a lot of things jogged in my memory.
Good.
Well, it's been good. Yeah, very good.
I'm glad that's been positive, Trev.
Yeah, it has, yeah.
I just want to say, I think I could say on behalf of everybody, especially, you know, all of us from Richmond Fellowship, how much we've appreciated your invitation that you extended to us. We would never have had this opportunity in any other way. And thank you so much for making it so, it's been challenging, very, very interesting. I think it's challenged all of us in different ways. So thank you, Lee. And all
You're so welcome.
I just want to do the same. I mean, it's been really good, really informative, and thank Will for coming in on his holidays, for sharing.
No problem.
And it's been really great. Enjoyed every one of them.
I think it's been an awakening for me, or a reawakening. It's a rediscovery. We're looking at things in a different way. We're going back in time and looking at items that we've perhaps forgotten what they meant to us. And we're looking beyond the object as well, or objects, whether it's the axe or something personal. It's been amazing. It's been hard, but rewarding.
Good. So you feel challenged in a positive way then, Sam?
Yeah. I think sometimes you need, you know, if someone says draw something, you don't know what to draw. But if someone gives you like a task, you, even if you veer off from it, you then can create or discover for yourself.